one of the country's most contentious U.S. Senate races right here in Mississippi. Cindy Hyde-Smith, Mike Espy. They are political opposites. So where do they stand on the issues that matter most to voters? Tonight, from WJTV 12 News, your local election headquarters, one-on-one with Mississippi Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Good evening and welcome to our first of two 30-minute sit-down interviews with the two leading U.S. Senate candidates. First up is incumbent Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Good evening, Senator.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being here with us. Let's get started. Well, you know, Senator, we are using this format tonight, and there doesn't appear that there is going to be a debate between you and Secretary Mike Espy. But it is not without trying on our end. Our station management reached out to your campaign and at least 11 times since February. Your staff was never interested in having a dialogue about a debate with WJTV. We understand other news outlets also reached out and got similar results. Nearly every senator in the country facing a legitimate opponent has or is participating in a debate, including Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, John Cornyn of Texas, Cory Gardner of Colorado, and Thom Tillis of North Carolina. Why have you not accepted a debate proposal?
You know, the debate about debates is usually the most interested person is a losing candidate and news reporters. Mississippians are more interested in what I've been doing in Washington, D.C. and how busy I've been to try to rebuild this economy to help us through COVID. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and we have been in Washington, D.C. doing our jobs that the people of Mississippi elected me to do.
Are you at all uncomfortable with being on the stage with Mike Espy?
Oh, I've done it before. Don't mind at all.
Do you feel you have nothing to gain from debating Mike Espy?
Well, there's such a stark difference between the two of us. You know, so many people, when they've talked about that, they said there's such a stark contrast between the two of you that, you know, what are you going to debate? You know, I'm just a conservative. I am secondly pro-amendment, Second Amendment, very strong to that. I don't believe in killing unborn babies. And we are here to work on the economy of getting this economy back, getting our nation back on track. So there's real differences. I am not being supported by the extreme liberal. I am a true conservative.
Do you believe it's something that the voters should decide about on the issues between you and Secretary Espy, to see you side by side?
You know, the good thing about being a sitting senator is we have a track record. And we're really proud of that track record. We've accomplished a lot of very good things. And anybody can go to our website and see those accomplishments. And we both have track records because he served in Congress too. And he voted with the Liberal Democrats 96% of the time. My record is that of a conservative record, working on the economy, working on education, getting things back. Working through this pandemic has been tremendous. And we're very proud of the accomplishments we've made doing that because that's what Mississippians have been suffering through. Getting small businesses back on track, getting the equipment rural hospitals need. We've been very focused on that. And the people of Mississippi, they can go look at my record.
Will you commit tonight to a debate on our station, WJTV, or any other outlet before the election? Yes or no?
Well, we have a Supreme Court justice that I'm really excited about, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, and we're in the process right now of a hearing process, and we will be voting on her very soon. There is no way that I can commit to you to do any of that because we don't know what that process holds. And again, the people of Mississippi, they elected me to be there to do the job I was elected to do, and that's where I'm going to be.
There are a number of other issues from COVID-19 to health care, and we'll get to those. But we want to feel on how you think and process things as a senator. In order to get to that, we want to go back a little bit. There remain questions about statements that you made in the past. I want to show a picture of you on your Facebook page back in 2014 when you posted this picture in a statement on your Facebook page. It said, I enjoyed my tour at Beauvoir, the Jefferson Davis home and presidential library located in Biloxi. And this is a must-see. Currently on display are artifacts connected to the daily life of the Confederate soldier, including weapons. Mississippi history at its best. Question for you, is this really Mississippi's history at its best?
That's Mississippi history, and it's displayed in a very good manner. And that's what I intended to let you know that day, that it is displayed very well. And if you have not been to Beauvoir, I encourage you to go. It's on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, it's in Biloxi, and it is a museum, and I tour a lot of museums. And, you know, that's just something that I like to do, is look back and study history of Mississippi, and it's displayed well. And we do have things that we're not proud of in our past, but it's displayed, and it is Mississippi history.
Is the Confederacy of Mississippi's history at its best?
It is displayed very well at its best in that museum.
In 2018, in the run-up to the special election, you were heard making this comment. In the state that had so many lynchings in this past of black men, 2 years later, do you regret making that statement?
We've addressed that 2 years ago. The people of Mississippi are concerned about what we have done since we've been elected the United States Senator, and even since we were appointed the U.S. Senator. We have done a lot of things. The first bill that I ever even introduced was signed into law by President Donald J. Trump. We have put ourselves on some really good committee assignments. We worked hard to get there. I'm on the Agriculture Committee. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. I'm on the Energy Committee. Things that are important to Mississippi, much more important than something that was addressed 2 years ago.
This past summer saw the removal of the state flag with the Confederate emblem. A number of leaders in this state, including the House Speaker and former chair of the state Republican Party, called for the flag to be changed. You put out a statement saying, should the people of Mississippi and their elected leaders decide to begin the process of finding a more unifying banner that better represents all Mississippians and the progress we have made as a state, I would support that effort. Did you support the changing of the Mississippi state flag?
I am very proud of the flag that we have now, that we boldly state our faith, that we say, in God we trust. And I think it does unify us, and it does show the true colors of Mississippi, and we'll continue to go in that direction.
Staying on the issue of race relations, do you think systemic racism exists? And if so, how do you define systemic racism?
Well, any racism is not acceptable. Let me be very clear on that. The lives that have been lost across this country, they've been tragic. My heart, my sympathy is with the families of the black men and women who lost their lives, and we do need to move forward. We want opportunity for all Mississippians, and I've had a long career in public service in Mississippi, and it has always indicated that. As I said before, we all have a record that we run on, and I have been very proud of that service and that record. And yes, we do need forward. We need to be unified, and I am so glad to be a part of that.
If you get 6 more years, how will you bridge that gap to bring unity together between the races?
Like I said again, those who died across this country in the civil unrest, they're tragic. They're very tragic. There is no excuse for that whatsoever. And as I have for the past 20 years, we will continue to work to unify, to work side by side, to work for all Mississippians. That's always been my true heart, and I've never wavered from that since I got elected in 1999.
Let's move on to the Supreme Court hearings. Next week, you'll be voting on the confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett. You have made it a focal point of your ads, and you support her nomination. Barrett's confirmation would give the court a 6-3 conservative majority. A week after the November election, the court will take up a case that could eliminate the Affordable Care Act. The decision could impact more than 500,000 Mississippians with pre-existing conditions and more than 100,000 Mississippians currently covered under the ACA. Do you think the Supreme Court would Judge Barrett to overturn Obamacare? Would you support that?
That decision is based on pure constitutionality, if it's constitutional or not. And let me again be very clear. Pre-existing conditions have to be covered. I have never wavered from that. We live in Mississippi. We have so many pre-existing conditions. I look forward to a bill that we can vote on that makes sure that people who need affordable health care, they have total access to it, and that it will include pre-existing conditions.
Well, Senator, I see you support pre-existing conditions, but there are other areas that the Republicans and Democrats agree on. Do you support a bill that would keep children under the age of 26 on their parents' health insurance?
When that situation is needed, certainly. I look forward to a really good health care plan that we can all support, that we can bring both sides in for people that can afford that when they're in the position that they need affordable health care, which all of us are. One of the things that really is so important to me is affordable prescription drugs. You know, I'm the one that went to the Senate floor and I'm the one that carried a receipt of eye drops that cost $450. I made a poster made of that receipt and went to the Senate floor live C-SPAN talking about affordable prescription drugs, and that will help the overall healthcare system greatly.
What about no lifetime caps on coverage? Would you support a bill for that as well?
We would have to look at that. Those that need certain provisions, we want to address each category that needs certain provisions, but it just needs to be reasonable. It needs to be something that both sides have an input in, that we can be proud of and that we can work toward, but mainly that it would cover pre-existing conditions and would lower drug prices.
A last question on this topic. Are you hoping Roe v. Wade comes before the new Supreme Court featuring Judge Amy Coney Barrett and that the court will move to overturn it?
I have always been a pro-life person. That is up to the courts to decide what that decision will be. But I have always been on record. That's the reason I am right now endorsed by the national pro-life groups, is because I don't believe in killing unborn children. You know, I will never believe in killing unborn children. I have been very strong proponent of that, and I will not waver on that.
Let's turn our attention now to COVID-19. Cases appear to be trending upward here in Mississippi, and we're heading into flu season. That said, the issue of masks is at the forefront. Health experts say they can control the spread of the virus. Do you support a national mask mandate?
Well, 85% of the death rate has 85% of the death rate has decreased by 85% since April. So we're going in the right direction. I personally wear a mask. You have to peel it off of me. I go through 3 airports twice a week. I go on multiple airplanes. I follow CDC guidelines. I've been tested negative, but I am very, very careful. So if CDC guidelines to me tell me that I need to wear a mask, I personally will wear a mask, but I will go by their guidelines.
Yeah, we noticed you walked in here with a mask on. You just took it off right before this interview, but President Trump does not often wear a mask and did not until a few months ago. Do you think the president should have set an example of wearing a mask more often?
I think that personally, I will always wear a mask, and that is up to individuals, the mandate or the not mandate, but I follow CDC guidelines, and I just think it's safer for individuals to wear a mask.
Should the president give more of an example?
And I can't speak for him, but I love seeing people wear masks because it makes me feel better.
It is predicted that a vaccine could be ready as early as the end of this year. The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says that he's cautiously optimistic that one could be deemed safe and effective by November or December. Once a vaccine is approved and ready for widespread distribution, will you take it?
I am very confident in the vaccine. One of the things that I have been so thrilled about is because of President Donald J. Trump, this has been fast-forwarded in a safe manner, and the things that we cut through to get to where we are nothing short of amazing. We need a vaccine. The American people want a vaccine, and I think that we will have a very safe vaccine on the market, and I am certainly willing to take it. I want my family to take it. I would not do anything to discourage anyone from going and getting the vaccine because I truly feel that it will be a safe vaccine, and we have science to back that up.
Would you support making a COVID-19 vaccine part of the vaccination regimen that all school children must take before they return to school?
I'm not the one that makes that decision. I'm not a public health official. I think that we need to leave that to the public health officials that have the medical degrees, which I do not. But I certainly want my child a vaccine, to have the vaccine.
There were 3 weeks out from the election. We talked about 20 days. You were talking about, or so, a little less than that. The country is without a new stimulus package. Last month, you voted on a stimulus package that didn't include a direct payment. Congress can't reach an agreement on a stimulus package, but if reelected, would you vote for direct payments?
I have voted twice already before this short recess on a coronavirus relief package. The Democrats blocked it both times. And, you know, we are still in the middle of this pandemic. The businesses out there, they still need help making payroll on many circumstances because we have not recovered from this. The Paycheck Protection Plan was so important. You know, we took so many calls from constituents, and my favorite thing is to help the people of Mississippi. When they call and they have an issue, that is my challenge, is to address that issue. We had so many people calling our offices that could not make payroll. They maybe weren't filling it out right, and we helped them go through the process of going online to make sure they clicked the right boxes so they could save that business and they could save those employees, and those employees could go home and provide for their families. We had a duty, we had a job to stabilize this economy very quickly in the best manner that we possibly could. And I think we came up with some very good solutions, and we've had a lot of really nice thank you notes. I am very, very passionate about helping all Mississippians. When you've got a problem, it is my #1 goal to solve it. When you have that many Mississippians with severe problems, that they've lost their job, they don't know how they're going to feed their family, and we need unemployment benefits extended, when we need that to get there immediately, because those were true, real situations. I live in the real world. I grew up in rural Mississippi. You know, some people lose their job, it may not impact them for a month or two. Most of the people in Mississippi, it is very immediate. I took a lot of pride in helping these families that were so desperate, in such a need. The kids were not even going to school. Their lives were just turned upside down. And to be able to be in a position to help them with not just the coronavirus relief package, which was very important, but even with virtual learning. In the past 6 months, I've gotten Mississippi $780 million for broadband, just in the past 6 months. We have not taken this position for granted in any way. We have worked very hard for the people of Mississippi. We want to continue to do that because that's what the people elected me to do. That's what they expected me to do. But it is my true passion, Brian. It is my true passion for public service, to get out there, to protect the unborn, to protect those Second Amendment rights for people out there that's part of the Constitution, to be able to get this economy back, to have the dignity of a job, to raise our family the way that we want to raise our family, to worship the way that we want to worship, and have an education system that has had assistance from a senator that cares to get in there and to make sure that they have what it took to get back to school. These things are expensive. You know, in the schools, to put up plexiglass, to put up the signs, the hand sanitizers, that was a major cost, and we stepped in and we made sure they had the money to do that. I was just in a school that they had everything in order. All the children had masks, and I asked them, I said, this is day before yesterday, and I asked them, how many positives have you had since you've been back? The principal held up one finger. They did things right.
What specific item is holding up the stimulus deal, that's the roadblock here?
The election. The Democrats killed 2 attempts of getting the stimulus package out that I voted for both, because they are not going to allow anything that would give President Trump a win or Republicans a win. And that's basically your answer, is the election. And hopefully we can get up there, we can get something passed, and we can continue to address the dire needs, because like I said, we are still in the middle of this pandemic. We're not nearly out of the woods. People out there need help.
With the current situation with the Supreme Court going on, the nomination of the Supreme Court, we could still get a stimulus package going on right now with
it could be done if it could be voted out of the Senate. But that's the problem. They're not going to vote it out of the Senate.
So senators would work on
attempts.
Nomination and on the stimulus package at the same time. They could be done at the same time.
We can multitask pretty well, but that is just not going to happen. That's the reality of this. It's called politics.
Will it happen after the election?
I truly think it will, and I hope we do it very swiftly, and I hope we have a very good bill that makes sense, that people can get back to work, and the unemployment benefits that would be extended would be reasonable, and not encouraging people not to work because they make more money than they did at their job. So we just have to really create a good package that everybody that sees is a reasonable package, because we certainly need it.
All right. And we're going to continue our conversation with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith right after this. We'll be right back.
Your station, your vote, your election headquarters. Welcome back to our one-on-one interview with U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith on WJTV 12
And
News.
welcome back. We are talking one-on-one with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Should there be early voting in Mississippi as other states have it, or at least no excuse absentee voting here in Mississippi?
Well, we have early voting in absentee voted. I had to vote Saturday, early voting in a local race that we had. And I firmly believe in making it easy for people to vote. And if you came into the courthouse and voted, I wouldn't have a problem with earlier voting than we have. But most of the time, they're very considerate. You go in there and you tell them why you have to be out of town, or you tell them, if you're over a certain age, you can go in and absentee vote. That's worked pretty well for us in the past. One of the things that I am totally opposed is mail ballots to people that didn't ask for them, because there's so many ways that there can be an error there. One of the attorneys explained to me in Washington, D.C., she said, Cindy, if you had ever registered anything with the Secretary of State office or any state agency, if you were under like Cindy Hyde on one, Cindy H. Smith on one, Cindy Hyde-Smith or Cindy Smith, you could get 5 ballots. And that happens very regularly, is what we have found out. When you mail people ballots, we should have a secure election system. We should have a method that you come in, that you're secure, that your vote was counted. But we only need to count it once. But we do have the absentee voting, but a lot of states do early voting that you can start coming in to the appropriate office 7 days in advance, some of them longer than that. And I think early voting is good, but only if it's controlled. But I think the method that we have has worked very good so far.
Should Mississippi have early voting like other states where you can come in and actually vote?
I think if you gave me a package that looked very reasonable, I could support some early voting, but it would have to be very controlled.
What are you expecting on election day here in Mississippi? Are you expecting some long lines here in Mississippi for the selection?
We always have long lines. Presidential debate, a president on the ballot, we always have long lines. So I hope we have long lines. I want good turnout, but the polls need to be managed safely, that you can distance, that people feel good about coming in, wearing a mask, the poll workers, taking precautions. And I feel good about it. I think we're going to have a very high turnout, but it's just like going back to school. You need to do what you're supposed to be doing when you're standing in line to vote too.
Should masks be mandated at the polls?
I think that everybody needs to just do what they think they need to do to keep themselves safe. Personally, I'm going to have on a mask, but that's not left up to me for the mandate. But I just think people need to follow CDC guidelines and just be considerate of other people, but go out to the polls and vote. And I hope we have a great, safe turnout, and that's the goal and that's the intentions of holding this election, just to make sure that everybody has that opportunity to cast a very important vote.
Well, let's turn to voting rights issues. If convicted felons can apply for the ability to carry a gun, should convicted felons be allowed to apply to get their voting rights back?
Well, there is a process that you can go through the state legislature that, everybody makes mistakes, but there are some people that do not have voting privileges, and when you commit a crime, you have to live by the law that was in place at that time.
Let's talk about back to COVID-19. The latest numbers show a total of 3,059 teachers, students, and staff tested positive for COVID-19 since the start of the school year. Should schools be open?
The teachers that I have talked to say definitely, in a safe manner. But, you have a lot of other issues that come with schools being closed. First of all, just the mental wellness of the students themselves, of being there. They need to be learning. We need to make sure that our kids are getting the best education. It creates an issue with parents needing to stay home because their children are at home. But the schools that I have been to, Byron, it has been amazing, the low numbers when they do what they're supposed to be doing.
When you see large gatherings in places like stadiums and other events when people are unmasked, how does that make you feel?
I wear a mask, and I'm not going to be in a large crowd with people that are just blatantly not, I'm going to get out quickly. You know, sometimes you go in, but I'm going to have my mask on. And those circumstances are just going to happen, and they're going to continue to happen. But I just urge again, everyone to go to the CDC website, to look at it, to do what it takes to keep everyone safe. It's simple to wear a mask. It really is. And I've worn one so much, I'm just used to it. But it's not really that hard to put it on. And I just think be safe, be cautious, and protect your family.
Does there need to be more regulation to wearing a mask, and particularly in these larger gatherings? Because, I mean, you do what you're supposed to do. But
well, you know, I'm one that regulations, some people abide by them and some people don't. Good luck in getting everybody to abide by them. And I'm one more on less regulations and just really good information of telling people that it is safer and how to protect themselves and their family.
This past summer saw unrest in several cities. In places like Portland, Oregon, Seattle, and Chicago, federal authorities were deployed. Those deployments were controversial, and some questioned whether they were constitutional. Should federal law enforcement be dispatched to quell civil disturbances, and if so, when?
Well, I believe in your right to demonstrate peacefully. Big emphasis on the word peacefully. There is no reason we should allow businesses to be burned. There's no reasons people should be turning over cars. We need to do what it takes to keep it peaceful and let the people that want that their agenda is to go out and destroy property, let them know there's consequences to that. It's illegal to go out and destroy property.
Among the many proposals coming out of these protests is an end to qualified immunity, which shields government officials and including law enforcement from being sued for violating federal civil rights. Should qualified immunity be eliminated or significantly rolled back? Well,
you know, everybody has to have the right to do their jobs. They have to be provided what they need for the protection to do their jobs. And that's the reason it is so important that we get the economy back on track so we can provide those jobs and provide those protections, because we are still in a very serious situation. We could still have riots that erupt. We're in a position that could easily happen at any time, but policemen need to be afforded the ability to do their jobs, but they need to have really good training. That's the reason that I voted for Tim Scott's Justice Bill, because it included accountability, responsibility, transparency. I was so disappointed when Senator Scott, who by the way has endorsed me wholeheartedly, when that bill failed, because we needed that Justice Bill to pass. They had some really good things in there. We even had some input from Mississippians that I had talked to on police training that got involved, that their voices were heard on how to do this better, because we do need the improved justice system. And that's exactly what Senator Tim Scott's bill would do. Very sad that it did not pass. And I hope that I get the opportunity to vote on that bill again, because it's what the country needs. They put a lot of work into that. He put his whole heart into that and a lot of input. And I was really proud that Mississippians had the ability to put input, to add input as well into that bill. But we do need it. We need a refresher. We need to remind people that this is the best practices of law enforcement, and we need the money to fund that to make sure that they have access to that.
Once this election is over, do you think we'll get some bipartisan justice reform nationwide?
I hope that we do, and I think that we will, and I hope Senator Tim Scott is the one that can lead the way, because he certainly deserves a lot of credit for the work he's put into this, and I would love to see that happen. I hope I get the opportunity to vote again.
Last month, President Trump signed an executive order to eliminate racial sensitivity training in the federal workplace during the presidential debate. He said this: "I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, and everywhere else." Do you agree with the president's decision?
Well, I mean, I'm not the one to make that decision. That is his choice. But I can tell you what I do agree to. I agree to everybody being treated fairly. I agree to that everyone needs to treat everybody with respect, that we can build on relationships, that we can capitalize on the things that we have in common. And I've been a pretty good consensus builder. You know, I served in the state Senate for 12 years, and that was just some of the best years of my life. And we had so much compatibility, so many good friends. We worked across aisles of different kinds day after day. And I just think that every person is a person that God created, and that we need to respect that, we need to get along with that, and I enjoy those relationships, and I look forward to many more.
Speaking of the president, following his bout with COVID-19, he is now campaigning again. We remember in 2018 that he came here to campaign you a number of times during the runoff election. Do you wish the president could be campaigning for you now?
Oh, the people of Mississippi, the majority of the people support the president's agenda. I support the president's agenda because I support a good economy. I support equality. I support a good health care system. Rural health care is so important, and people want prosperity in this state. The number one thing I can do for you is to, first of all, to protect your religious freedoms, but to give you the dignity of a job, to create an environment that prosperity is common, that we can grow Mississippi, we can have good jobs here, respectable jobs here, that people can raise their families the way they want to raise their families, to worship the way they want to be. Mississippi is a great place. We have some wonderful people here. Every state can improve things. We're no different than that. But I'm telling you, it is such an honor to represent the great people of Mississippi. You know, north of I-20, we really don't think that much about shipbuilding and the military, but I have gotten funds for shipbuilding, $2 billion additional dollars that goes into shipbuilding. So many of that money came right back to Mississippi. We need a strong national defense. And it really surprises me when I talk to people throughout the state that they really don't realize what a player Mississippi is in that. You go to the Gulf Coast, you go to Jackson County, we have so many warships that have been built there. We have so many accolades. There's not enough time to name all of them, of what we have done for the national defense, for military, for creating jobs here in Mississippi, but money well spent. Because any time that I can support a veteran that has served this country, you bet I am right there. We have to have a strong military, that we have peace through strength. And the only way you get that strength is to support your military, to support the defense, make sure they have the funding to continue to do that. And my position on the Appropriations Committee, it has allowed me to share those stories, that Mississippi is a major player there, and we have had the ability, the honor to make sure they had what they need to succeed.
Medical marijuana is on the November ballot here in Mississippi on two different proposals. Do you support the initiative 65 or 65A, which would legalize medical marijuana in the state?
I support law enforcement 100%. Law enforcement is opposing this. I have always said, let doctors prescribe medical marijuana if they want to do that. Let that be left up to the FDA, the people that regulate that. I oppose this. You know, we have had such an opioid crisis in this state, and when law enforcement tells me this is going to compound those things, we don't need any more of that. We need, first of all, something that the legislature can control. And if cities and municipalities don't want that in their communities, they need to have some local control over that as well. So I do oppose what is on the ballot right now, but law enforcement, they have a tough job. And the toughest thing is to deal with the drug issues. Another thing, the open borders. You know, we have so many drug cartels that are blatantly bringing drugs into Mississippi now because there are no restrictions in so many areas on the border. I believe in securing that border. I believe in making sure if you come into this country, you come through the appropriate process of getting in here. But when law enforcement opposes it, I assure you I will support law enforcement and I will oppose it too.
Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, we thank you for your time and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And stay with us as we have assembled a panel to talk about what we've just heard. We'll be right back with much more after this break. Welcome back. To talk about what we've just heard from Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, we put together a panel. 12 News senior political correspondent Gerald Harris is joining us here, and joining us is Dr. Nathan Shrader, Director of American Studies, Department at Millsaps College, and via Zoom, Frank Corder, Managing Editor for Y'all Politics. Right off the bat, we asked her about why she's not debating Mike Espy.
The debate about debates is usually the most interested person is a losing candidate and news reporters. Mississippians are more interested in what I've been doing in Washington, D.C. and how busy I've been to try to rebuild this economy. Well, there's such a stark difference between the two of us. You know, so many people, when they've talked about that, they said there's such a stark contrast between the two of you that, you know, what are you going to debate?
And Frank, we'll begin with you. Should she be debating Mike Espy? Is this a missed opportunity?
I'm all for debates. However, in this circumstance, she just debated Mike Espy 2 years ago. Now the question has been asked, you know, why is she debating? Because other Senate candidates are debating, like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, but neither of them faced the same candidate in two different elections in 2 years. There's no real difference from what Espy has offered up so far. Neither is that true from Hyde-Smith. I think that Hyde-Smith's campaign is focused on results and producing what she can do in the Senate and what she has done in the Senate. Espy, however, is still running on that same rehashed, recycled narrative from 2 years ago.
Dr. Shrader, this has been a conversation that has taken place for quite some time now and down the final stretch. I mean, we've asked since February, is this a missed opportunity for Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith to not debate, to not stand next to Mike Espy, and what is a one-point race?
Oh, without a doubt. Look, any United States senator, regardless of who they are, what state they represent, and how large or small their lead may be, I think has an obligation to the people of their state and the people of the country to debate their opponent. What I heard from Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith today, it was almost as if she had just finished watching the movie Dodgeball. You know, I heard the dip, dive, duck. The dip, dive, duck, and dodge tactic come up over and over, where she's saying that she can't debate because she's too busy. Well, and also because the part that was a little alarming to me, the contrasts were so stark that she can't debate or doesn't think the debate is necessary. Well, that's actually when we want to have a debate. The voters especially need to see a debate when the candidates say that they're very much opposed on the issues, they have different opinions. Voters ought to be able to hear that. Now, keep in mind, I don't believe that we need to be doing what some states do and they debate too much. I think we need several debates, rigorous debates, so that the people of Mississippi can see who they're voting for and the differences between the candidates, because this is a 6-year term in one of the most important elected positions in the country.
Now, this is a rematch of the 2018 race, and race is once again an issue. We asked about the comment when she said she'd attend a public hanging. She deflected, saying it was addressed 2 years ago, but we also asked about a 2014 Facebook post from Jefferson Davis's home, a display she called Mississippi's history at its best. This was her response.
And, you know, that's just something that I like to do, is look back and study history of Mississippi, and it's displayed well. And we do have things that we're not proud of in our past, but it's displayed, and it is Mississippi history.
Is the Confederacy of Mississippi's history at its best?
It is displayed very well at its best in that museum.
And once again, there you heard Dr. Shrader just deflected the issue completely. Has this issue been sufficiently addressed, or is this something that still needs to be hammered out?
Well, absolutely not. It's not been sufficiently addressed, and that's why I was hoping to hear her dig a little deeper into this issue, given the fact that it played such an important role in the 2018 race, and she's never really sufficiently addressed it. Now, I do, in fairness to Senator Hyde-Smith, there is a tasteful and respectful way to present controversial elements of our history. But what I heard from her in the full interview today and in that clip was that she outright refused to renounce or criticize the state's Confederate past, and she seemed content with keeping it as just sort of a basic dodge on that question, when I think she has too many problems on the race question going into this race, or this election rather, to not be more explicit in renouncing the state's Confederate past and distancing herself from that incident, but also the public hanging incident. One good way for her to do that would be to have a debate with her opponent.
And Frank, your thoughts on her answer to the question?
Well, truthfully, I think this whole situation is kind of ridiculous that we're still discussing this 2 years later. She is correct. If you've ever been to Beauvoir in Biloxi, and it's down the street from me, it's a very well done display of history. And that's what she was saying. There was no deflection. She was just clarifying what she meant and what she said. As far as racism, she addressed that in the interview with you, Byron, and said that racism of all forms is unacceptable. And as a former Democrat, as she is, she worked across party lines as a Democrat and Republican with white and black representatives to get things done for this state. So her record is clear that she is not a racist. She is not putting forth racism as an issue. However, Mike Espy is running on the race card and has played the race card throughout this entire cycle.
And Gerald, you have followed this race very closely in both campaigns. What is the issue that will decide this race, do you believe?
Well, I think there's two things that will decide this race, and it depends on who wins this race. For Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, if she wins this race, it's going to be the President Donald Trump factor. She's going to drive out those Republican voters who sat out maybe the election from last year or 2 years ago. And we know that presidential elections drive up numbers, especially in a state that loves President Donald Trump. If Mike Espy wins this race, it's going to be health care. It's on the top of a lot of people's minds. If you go out and talk to voters, their issue and their top issue has been health care. And nationally, you've seen health care come into the forefront with the nomination of Judge Barrett. So that's going to be the two issues that are going to drive out voters and are going to decide this race one way or the other, health care or the Donald Trump factor.
And speaking of that, we asked Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith about the Affordable Care Act, and assuming Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court, would Senator Hyde-Smith like to see it overturned? This is what she said.
That decision is based on pure constitutionality, if it's constitutional or not. And let me again be very clear. Pre-existing conditions have to be covered. I have never wavered from that. We live in Mississippi. We have so many pre-existing conditions. I look forward to a bill that we can vote on that makes sure that people who need affordable health care, they have total access to it, and that it will include pre-existing conditions.
Well, Dr. Shrader, Gerald touched on this, but how important is health care going to be in this race and other races?
Well, especially in this Senate race, healthcare is very important. And let me explain why, just briefly. I look at COVID-19 as changing the landscape on some of these issues. I don't think COVID-19 itself is the issue, but think of it as the umbrella. And underneath that is economic concerns, healthcare concerns, and education concerns too. And I think that the pandemic and the length with which this pandemic has been drawn out in the United States, in part because of poor policy planning, has made education, economics, and healthcare, all those things that fit under the COVID umbrella, more important. So people are thinking more right now about, if I get sick, how am I going to pay for it? If my children get sick, how are we going to pay for it? And I think that this was both a strength and a weakness in Senator Hyde-Smith's interview today. I think she was exceptionally on target for herself in this campaign by renouncing the idea that we're going to get rid of coverage for pre-existing conditions. I think that was absolutely a smart thing to do. But I think she faltered a little bit where she said she was essentially unsure about allowing people's offspring to remain on their insurance until they're 26, especially in a bad economy, and when healthcare was on people's minds. And also she was unsure about Byron's question pertaining to lifetime caps on coverage. And one last point on this, I'm rather dumbfounded by a point that she made there when addressing Judge Amy Barrett Cohen and Obamacare and the effects of all these things working together. She said that this is really a question about constitutionality. And she's running in this race as a conservative Republican. She says she's a constitutional conservative, the senator does. But my interpretation of her comment there was that she's essentially saying that it's up to the courts to legislate the outcome of Obamacare. And that, to me, is the exact opposite of what one would expect from someone who is running as a constitutional conservative candidate. That was, I think, a real moment of weakness in that she's essentially passing the buck to the courts to legislate Obamacare.
I would disagree with Nathan on that point, that this is the law of the land at this point, and it is left up to the courts to decide the constitutionality on this issue, on this law. It was passed by Democrats, and so now the court system is left to decide whether or not it is constitutional or not. That is the proper role of the courts, and the ACA is definitely up for debate within the court in this session of the Supreme Court. Now, as far as healthcare goes, of course, that's an issue in this campaign because the fact that it is, given the pandemic and given what's going on with the court system and the ACA. However, as Dr. Shrader noted, Senator Hyde-Smith was very adamant about covering pre-existing conditions, and I will agree with him that she did say that perhaps those who are 26 or below could not be on those insurances at some point. But that is a conservative issue as well. Conservatives do not think that keeping children on their health care systems long term is the right answer long term for those families. They think that economy and job security is more important to be able to pay for your own way. So I think the senator was on point with her messaging in that issue.
All right, we're going to have much more with our panel when we come back after this break. We're back. 12 News' Gerald Harris is joining me, along with Millsaps College professor Dr. Nathan Shrader and Frank Corder from UAll Politics.
Hey, Frank, what did you not hear from Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith that we need to hear out of this today?
Well, I'm not saying that we need to hear it, but I think one of the things that this campaign cycle needs to point out is the differences between these candidates. And so I would say that Senator Hyde-Smith could have differentiated herself a little more by speaking to Mike Espy's record and his past. He has some things in his past and on his record that could have really drawn out the difference with her and him. And I think she's doing that through her ads now. But in your interview, Byron, I think that that would have been beneficial for her.
Dr. Shrader, what did you take away from this, and what do you think that down the final stretch that you need to hear from Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith and voters need to hear from her?
Well, I believe that there were two areas where she was extremely effective today. I think her sharp focus on constituent service is extremely important. And I also believe that her reassuring people about her own mask wearing and behavior in that area, despite the fact she wouldn't criticize the president, I think she was attempting to show her own responsibility in that area. But I do think that there were two particular spots where we need to hear more. First, she was essentially absent on any real detail of a stimulus package. And she said that we can't enact a stimulus bill to help Mississippians and Americans and small businesses that are hurting because it can't pass the Senate. Well, that's the problem. Her party controls the Senate. So she needs to address that matter. But also the House has already passed a stimulus package and the Senate won't negotiate with them. So I'd like to hear her talk a little bit about why she is rejecting the House version of this. And the other thing is when she said that she would not commit to requiring school children to take a vaccine to return to school when that vaccine is available. That's something that's going to have to become very common as any other vaccinations are that we require of school children. And so I have a feeling that some parents who are listening to that may have had some hesitation hearing her comments in that area.
All right, thank you, Dr. Shrader. Some final thoughts when we come back. And welcome back. Gerald, some final thoughts on what we heard tonight.
Yeah, definitely heading down the final stretch for Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. My question is, can she prevent ticket splitting that Mississippi has a history of doing. If you look back, Jim Hood, a Democrat, becoming attorney general as the rest of the states have voted for Republicans. Can she prevent that? I don't think the president has enough time to come to Mississippi between now and the final election day, November 3rd. But can she stop Republican voters heading into the ballot box, circling President Donald Trump's name and also circling Mike Espy's name? That's going to be the question for me, and that's the question that I have for voters as they head to the ballot box.
All right, we'll have to wait and see. It was about less than 3 weeks to go.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Gerald. And thank you, and thanks to Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith for joining us, also Dr. Nathan Shrader and Frank Corder. A reminder, next Friday night, we are talking with Mike Espy, one-on-one with the Mississippi U.S. Senate candidate. It airs at 9 p.m. If you missed any of tonight's special, it's available online at WJTV.com. For 12 News' Gerald Harris, I'm Byron Brown. 12 News at 10 is coming up next. Make it a good night.